Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, everybody. How is everyone doing on this beautiful Tuesday morning? We are officially a week into March. I can't believe it. I can and I can't. So I hope you guys are all having a really good 2021. And I'm really excited to be here with you this morning. I am going to start doing these workshops more often in this group just to begin teaching you more of basically how I work with clients in both the group coaching program that I have, which is the portal, and I've opened my one-on-one coaching just to a few more clients. So yeah, I just want to teach you, give you many tools as I can on here since this group is growing. And I know that a lot of people are really open to this work. So when I say this work, I'm a transformation facilitator. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Hollis Bailey. I am the founder of this group, and I help people remember who they are and what they came here to do. And in that process of remembering, it's a path, it's a healing path. And in that process of remembering, we really do to have a full liberation of any of our suffering, whether that's just a little bit of agitation with, your family of origin or your job, or whether it's a major thing that you remember and that you, like we're going to talk about today, which is like maybe a trauma or something that happened to you. In this path of liberation, remembering who we are, I call it remembering, waking up. It's a path of really being able to take responsibility for ourselves and our lives and stop blaming and shaming, feel all that there is to be felt, deal with the past, how it needs to be dealt with. But it's really about taking our power back in that way. My definition of empowerment is having the capacity and the willingness to take everything that's ever happened to us, whether it was self-inflicted or whether it was by someone else or whether it was just, experience that happened like a car accident, something completely accidental, but taking everything that's happened to us and claiming responsibility for that and making it mean something. So that's my definition of power. And I've been talking about that a lot because in looking back on what I did over my life in my healing journey, that's really what I've done, is be able to take all of those memories, some very painful and some really ugly, and turn them into something I can use today that's very useful for my own life, certainly going to be useful for me in this new path of motherhood, and definitely useful in helping my clients do the same, right? So when we stay victims, and there's nothing wrong if you have a victim mentality, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just becoming aware of that and knowing that when we stay a victim to our circumstances, whether that's something that happened to us in the past or something that's happening now, we're never going to feel that full liberation. We're never going to be able to step into our true power. We're going to find it really, really hard to have complete faith in a higher power. God, goddess, that inner source. There's many names for it, but that knowing that's on the inside that everything is perfect, that life is joyful and you are complete and perfect just the way you are. But we have conditioning, and when we live by our conditioning and let that run our lives, we continue to run into walls. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about the difference between staying in our minds and, knowing it all, having it all figured out, and bringing that down into our emotional bodies and our physical bodies so that it's just one step on the path to liberation. And there are many ways home, but it's just one step on the path to liberation to really becoming aware and conscious and responsible for your pain and your suffering. And I can tell you that on my journey, I spent many years on the quote unquote spiritual path, learning things and figuring it out and picking up another pathway, picking up another set of beliefs, picking up another teacher. But I was missing this piece of integration and bringing it into my emotional body and my spiritual body, and my physical body. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. And I'm going to use the topic of trauma to explain this. So first of all, whether you know you have, trauma, have experienced trauma or not, we all in essence have. And some, of course, may be more obvious than others. But if you think of even a child who loses her teddy bear, say, that can be experienced as a trauma in the emotional and physical body. Of course, we all probably as adults have many examples of where we can remember things being more obvious traumas, like I mentioned, a car accident, or maybe you had an abusive relationship, or various things. But I'm going to use this topic of trauma because it's the easiest way to, well, for a few reasons. It's a really easy way to see where we hold things in our head, because in order to actually process trauma, in the moment that happens, it's like a freeze in time. So like I said, it could be something so simple as a child losing her teddy bear, or it could be something really major like a car accident or a fight with your partner. And so it's like your mental, emotional, and physical body in that moment, if they are not capable of processing that energy, the emotion in that moment, it will get trapped in the body. So it gets trapped in the physical body if the emotions are unexpressed. And then our mind does this really interesting thing. If we don't have the tools to process that trauma, it makes up a story about why we should not go back there. And so then this trapped emotion stays in the body, and it starts to create interesting behaviors, symptoms over time. If we experience a lot of this trapped emotion, we start to see things like physical dis-ease, or angry outbursts, or just ways of not being able to, we start to notice that we're really triggered by things that doesn't have anything to do with the situation. So the idea of, I love to work with trauma and teach people tools, like really simple tools, to become familiar with this process so that they can feel empowered and not be stuck in their conditioning. And so this is a huge practice of unwinding our mental conditioning, our belief system, our thought system, which then gives you access to the emotional and physical body so that you can process these things to completion. And it really, talking about liberation, it really opens up a lot of doors when you start becoming aware of how much your mental body is preventing you from living your life. We have excuses for not dealing with issues, things in our life that we really could deal with in a pretty simple way. And I'll use the example of just having a job you're unhappy with, for example. If you are really unhappy with the job and you've been that way for many years, but your mind is telling you, I can't, I need the money, or I can't do anything else, I don't have any skills, or, comes up with 100 different reasons. Well, somewhere in your body, that that's all untrue. That you have the power to find something else, seek something else. That you deserve happiness. That you're worth it, and that you would be so much happier doing something else. But our minds can keep us really blocked from liberation. And in doing these simple practices that I'm going to teach you today, I'm going to teach you one. There's many more. But I'm going to teach you just one that you can start to practice with more regularity. This starts to break down that process. It's called pattern interrupt. So you just immediately notice when you're triggered, or when you have a belief that is the same belief that you had a million times. It just doesn't seem open and expansive. And so in that moment, you stop and you bring it into your body and you say, how am I really feeling about this situation? How's my physical body? Where can I feel it in my body? How are my emotions feeling? Is this attached to anything? So it's this moment of stopping the normal mental process and pattern that we go down and come to conclusions about that keep us stuck. And just in that moment, bringing yourself into an awareness of your emotions and your physical body. And essentially this is opening up the pathway for energy to move in your physical and emotional body. If any of you want to say hi, go ahead and pop a comment in the box. Let me know where you're tuning in from. So let's see, what have I gone over already? So like I mentioned, I love the word remember. My group, if you're not a part of it, is called Surrender to Remember. And I just love this word remember because when we are born, we are these perfect beings, right? Yes, I do believe that we come in with karmic lessons to learn. And so we'll begin to develop the energy of that as we grow up in the world. But we are essentially really connected to the purest of pure. Hi, Lori, good morning. The purest of pure that is within us, and that really gives us life, and that's our soul. So when we're born, we're these perfect, pure beings. And as we grow, of course, we go through the experiences that we go through, and we become eventually adults, or maybe young adults, or maybe in my case, I'm 38, though I have been on this path for a little while. And we just notice that something is not quite right. And this is a direct result of not having the tools to liberate yourself from the things you have experienced and suffered, and that's emotionally. Emotions are just energy in motion. So you can think of everything that we do as kind of an emotional thing. So we're feeling feelings all day long, but oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to express those feelings. So we can end up trapping emotions in our body, even ones like joy and freedom and happiness, because we don't allow ourselves the time and the space to really express those emotions. So it's kind of funny because we don't really know. I say it's kind of funny being on this path because we don't really know who we are when we're healed, because all we've really ever known is this like stuck part of us, or this unliberated way of being. So we know the suffering, we know the pain, we know how to avoid the pain, right? We develop avoidance patterns. We know how to stuff emotions if we weren't taught that they were safe to express. We interpret really interesting things growing up. So it's no one's fault. And this is the whole point about bringing yourself back to, this is a very self-responsible path in claiming your remembrance, claiming your freedom, claiming your ability to be the creator of your own life, is we have to take the responsibility back on ourselves. But I think it's interesting that we don't really know who we are when we're fully healed, because all we've really ever known is, the shadow parts and the trauma and the conditioning. And so eventually it gets bottled up to a point where we say, okay, something needs to happen here. For me, my first awakening was when I was 23 years old, and I had an addiction problem that sent me into rehab. So on my 23rd birthday was my first wake-up call to this work, and being opened up to the possibilities that there was a path to freedom and liberation from all of the feelings that I had basically been stuffing for 23 years. So when we wake up to this, when we get on this path, when we decide, yeah, I do want to remember what it was like to be a child, happy, joyous, and free. I do want to be the creator of my own life. I want to do these things. And in order to get there, we have to go through some of the cleaning out process. And this is a very somatic experience. This is only done when we can actually get into our physical bodies and get into our emotional bodies and allow these stuck emotions to be liberated. You know, the potential exists in us all. There's not anyone more screwed up than the other, essentially. We all think we're like the worst ones and we have the worst family and the worst thing happened to us. And or on the other end, we think we want to take care of everyone else because you're not worth taking care of. So you're going to love and put all your energy and love into everyone else because you're just not worth it. So it can kind of swing both ways. But this potential really is in all of us, and this potential to step back into your power and the capacity, having the capacity and the willingness to look at everything that's happened to you and become so grateful for all of it and turn it into something really, really useful. And that's when liberation happens. It begins when we claim responsibility for this journey. So let me go back to my notes here. So I'm going to use a couple of quotes by Peter Levine, and then I'll talk for just a little bit longer about the theory, and then we're actually going to sink into a meditation and a practice that I want to teach you in terms of getting out of your mind and learning how to drop into your emotional and physical body to begin doing this this work of releasing trauma and allowing emotions to move more freely. So Peter Levine is probably one of the most well-known trauma therapists out there. He's written an amazing collection of books, one that I read called Waking the Tiger. And he says in virtually every spiritual tradition, suffering is seen as a doorway to awakening. So if you are in a position where something just doesn't feel quite right, you know, whether that's you've been trying to lose weight for a really long time and it hasn't happened yet, or you've been trying, like I said, the job thing's a huge one, especially right now with the state of the world, when we've all been questioned in this last year to really reevaluate our priorities and values and where we want to be spending our time. Like if you really have this desire to be doing something you love and get recompensated financially for it, like this is the time to claim responsibility for our life and know that if you are suffering in this moment, that's great. That means you're knocking on the door to liberation. You're knocking on the door to a potential awakening. So once we start down this path, there is literally not one person I know in my last, I'm 38, so 17-ish years of doing this work who has been able to become liberated without doing at least a little bit of the trauma work and the somatic work, because we have to release it in our bodies. And so Peter Levine also, I put this quote on my Facebook group, but I'm going to read it out loud because he just has the most amazing description of trauma. And really, this is a really good way of letting everyone know that no one's immune to it. So he said, in short, trauma is about loss of connection. Like I said, when it happens, it's like a freeze in time, and it happens on the mental, emotional, and physical level. So when those emotions aren't able to be expressed, it just traps it. And this is what it does. Trauma is about loss of connection to ourselves, to our bodies, to our families, to other people in the world, actually to the world around you. This loss of connection is often hard to recognize because it doesn't happen all at once. It can happen very slowly over time. And when we adapt to these subtle changes, sometimes without even noticing them, we just get stuck. These are the hidden effects of trauma, the ones most of us keep to ourselves. We may simply sense that we do not feel quite right without ever becoming fully aware of what is taking place. That is a gradual undermining of our self-esteem, our self-confidence, our feelings of well-being, and connection to life. Our choices become limited as we avoid certain feelings, people, situations, and places. The result of this gradual constriction of freedom is the loss of vitality and potential for the fulfillment of our dreams. And I can tell you from personal experience, I mean, when I started doing the trauma work, which I've been on this path again for a while, but haven't been as deeply enthralled as this in the somatic part until recently. But I can tell you reading that quote is just like exactly to a T, a description of what happened to me. I just didn't know that I was holding on to all of these trapped emotions. And I was trying to figure out mentally and trying to figure out why I kept getting labeled with, anxiety and depression and mental illness and things like this over the years. And I just thought something was innately wrong with me until I learned about trauma. And especially if you're a sensitive person, if you're empathic, it can take the smallest things to really leave a mark on you. And I have one memory I'll share. And again, this is just so innocent on all parts, but it left a huge mark on the way I ended up structuring my own conditioning and living my life in this way, in this trapped way. So I was at my grandma's house and I had just baked a cake. And I was probably like 5 to 7 or so. And one of my uncles came in and just, probably didn't have any ill intentions on, certainly didn't know the effects it would have on me and the rest of my life. But so he shoved my face in that cake. And I remember in that moment being terribly, terribly sad. Like, someone had just started to choke me out or something. I remember because I went back to this memory in doing this work and I felt all of those emotions that were there. And so I remember the constriction and the sadness. And it was like my joy and liberation had just been taken away from me. And all he did was something that he thought was going to be funny. And that in my body, because I didn't cry for whatever reason, either I was told not to cry or I just felt embarrassed. So I didn't express those emotions. I thought about it all the time. So I was actually reminded and re-triggered of the embarrassment and the humiliation on a subconscious level. But because the picture was on our refrigerator all growing up, so I saw that picture my whole life. But I had no idea it had the impact. It had made the impact it had made until I went back and did this work and realized how much emotion was there. When I went back into this memory, I started shaking, I started crying, I started feeling embarrassed, I felt ashamed, I felt just physically from head to toe heat, anger, rage, like every emotion on the scale. And I had been carrying that around with me since 7 years old. I did this emotional release just a couple of weeks ago. And it was so powerful to just witness and be with that memory, be with that part of my inner child and witness all of the things in my body without putting a story to it. Again, I'm not mad at my uncle. I'm not mad at anyone at this point. I was so grateful to be able to witness all of the energy stored in my body that was just honestly waiting to be released. And that's what we do when we get out of our minds and we allow the energy to move in our bodies and emotions. We just allow it to move and then we're liberated and then it's free. And current energy can start flowing in and out more freely, right? But when we have these trapped emotions, one of two things happens that you might recognize. So the first thing that can happen is once we start to store this emotion to that degree, we do develop things like anxiety, depression, lack of confidence, huge self-esteem issues. I had all these stories about fears of people. It was because in that moment, my body had learned that being in a safe place like my grandma's house was no longer safe. So I started immediately, unconsciously watching my back everywhere I went. And I practiced that for 30 years. And so just to give you an idea of the power of this work, once we allow that emotion to be expressed, and I'm not going to go too much into the inner child work, but I will say that, trauma work and inner child work are very hand in hand. Essentially, the inner child, those parts of us that did experience at some point that something wasn't safe, or that we were not allowed to express our emotions, or whatever, something more obvious like actual physical or mental or emotional abuse. When our inner child interprets things like that, they will continue to remind you that you did not feel that pain in the moment until you feel the pain. And once you feel the pain, once you allow your inner child to express him or herself, that's it. You heal that relationship with that aspect of yourself, and you are fully liberated from any of the pain that was once stored and kept as a reminder for you to come back to it. So I do want to say that because I don't want to give any false perceptions here. This is not a game of going back and digging up all of your traumas and going back and cleaning up all of your dirty cobwebs or dirty rooms. That's not at all about what it's about. In fact, that can actually create more trauma, especially when you don't have the tools. So the only reason I will take you into that direction today, and I take my clients in both the group coaching program that I have and my individual coaching sessions, is simply to teach you the tools to learn what to do when you are triggered and when your traumas are resurfaced. So your present moment situation is always 100% of the time going to hold it's going to show you, it's going to present to you what's up to be healed. So we actually don't need to ever go back and do any healing. Just know that your present moment, especially when you open the door consciously to this work, when you hire a coach, when you start down this path and say, yeah, I do really want to be liberated. I am going to claim responsibility for this. I am going to see what's out there in terms of tools for me so that I can end my suffering. Especially when you open the door, your body will know. We have many bodies. So your physical body will start telling you, your emotional body will start telling you, and you'll see it in the mirrors, in people that are in your life and situations that are in your life. So you have pretty much basically all day long, every day, to choose the situation and thing that you want to work on and want to be healed. But for the purposes of this practice today, I am going to ask you to recall either a current trigger or a past trigger or something that had an emotional charge, just so that you can learn a tool to use moving forward to begin getting out of here, breaking the conditioning that kept you stuck, bringing it into your physical body, bringing it into your emotional body, and becoming comfortable with feeling it and allowing it to move so that you can liberate yourself from that charge. And man, is it ever a pleasurable experience to realize the next time you would normally be triggered that you're no longer triggered, to have someone in your life and versus see them as triggering, or someone that you get triggered by into rage or anger or annoyance or aversion, that you're seeing them with compassion and love. That is really the whole reason we do all of this, is because it is so magical to realize how much your energy shifts when you do this own work. Your job is not to change anyone out there. Your job is not to change anyone out there. The only reason those people, anyone in your life, any situation in your life is there, is to be a mirror for you, to let you know where your work is. And that is the real paradigm shift in taking on your suffering and liberating yourself from any discontentment in your life, is to realize that you will never have the power to change anyone, and nor will they have the power to change you. So if you're blaming your emotions on someone else, that's a really good sign that this work is for you. Because when you can start to take responsibility for that and say, absolutely no one and no thing on this planet is in control of my emotions except for me, and that's the truth. Wow, that is a huge, huge, huge shift in the direction of you becoming a very empowered individual, mentally, physically, spiritually. You'll get your vitality back when you start to recognize this. You will not ever have to be afraid of any situation ever, because you will know that you have the tools in any given moment to face anything that comes up. And this is also just to get to like the really bright side of it. When you start to begin creating the life you want because you know how to do it, you just have all the tools. You no longer have fear. You no longer have worthiness issues. You no longer have lack of confidence. You no longer have lack of self-love. You have all of that in you restored to know that no matter what comes your way, you're ready for it. You're ready to take on the world. The world becomes your oyster at that point. So that's the real result we're getting at here. This is just the beginning steps. Okay, let me check in on my notes here. Okay, so let's do, for the next half an hour or so, we're going to do a somatic experience. And I'm going to give you a chance to experience what it feels like to be present and become aware of the difference between your mental body and your physical body and your emotional body. So don't judge yourself on anything that that comes up during this session. Do give yourself this full time. So let's do this for about 20 minutes to be present with this exercise. Try not to get up and move around and try to complete it. So if you're going to start it with me right now, just commit to being here for the full 20 minutes, okay? So let's first just get into a meditative position. You can sit down, try and be with your spine straight up for the purposes of this exercise so that we do get full range of energetic movement in our spine. So just find a comfortable position, whether you're sitting on the ground or sitting on a chair, and start to feel yourself heavy on whatever you're sitting on. Maybe you feel your feet on the ground, your sit bones on the ground. And float your eyes closed. Bring awareness to your breath, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And now bring the inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Relaxing your body from the head all the way down to your toes. Just doing a quick body scan, noticing where you're holding on to tension. You can release that tension with the breath. Just breathe into that spot. And on the exhale, sink deeper down with gravity. Continue to scan your body for any tense spots. Breathing deeply into the belly. And exhaling. Full exhale out through your nose. So now I want you to bring awareness to your heart space. This is the center of your chest. And this is your energetic heart that I'm talking about. We have our physical heart, and we have our energetic heart space. This is the house of our soul, where deep, deep, deep down in our heart lies the perfect divine spark that gives us life in these physical bodies. So I want you to remain aware of this area And I'm going to do a little bit of sound therapy. So just allow this to help you breathe deeper into your chest and really let go of those last bits of tension in your body, bringing yourself into a deeply relaxed state. Allow your body to fully relax, expanding your heart space. So as I lead you into this exercise, I want you to know, and to come back to this if you need to come back to this, just to know that you are safe always and forever to feel any emotion that comes up, to try and not judge any emotion that your mental body may bring an avoidance pattern. You may want to get up and move away from this computer screen, this exercise. You may feel a sudden urge to go do something. You may feel fear arise if you start to feel emotions intensely. So I want you to know, I promise you, you are 100% safe to feel any emotion that comes up. Your body is made to do this. We are energetic beings. That's all we are. So anything that comes up in this exercise, know that you are 100% safe and okay to feel it. And the deeper you can go with it, the more liberation you will experience on the other side. It's just energy. So as we move down to our physical body, we're going to use the mind as a tool here, simply to recall either a person who you're very triggered by, a situation that you're very triggered by. Maybe you're already in that space of feeling emotionally charged. But I want you to bring up either a memory, and not the biggest, most traumatic one. Maybe it's a recent fight with your partner, or even if you can't think of anything, I always give the example of just remembering when you were separating from someone, how painful that can feel. So bring up something that has an emotional charge to it and sit with that memory until you begin to feel those emotions arise. And all you're going to do here is become the observer of your emotional body and the physical body. So as these emotions arise, you can name them if that helps, but more importantly, I want you to become aware of the sensation. So as the sadness or grief begins to arise, where are you feeling that in your body? What is coming up? Is it a constriction? Is it heat? Maybe it's tension. If you are flooded with emotions and need to cry, need to, move your arms, maybe shake your arms because the tension is too much and you don't want to cramp up. Absolutely give yourself this time and space to move those emotions. The only reason we're using our mind here is to help trigger the sensations and the emotions. So if you need to go back to the memory and remember how sad it was, remember how hurt you were, remember how angry you were, remember how afraid you were, remember how ashamed you felt. Use the mind as a tool and then drop out of your mind and into your physical body and notice the sensations that are arising. Continue to breathe. Knowing that it is safe and appropriate to be feeling everything that you are feeling. If there is stuckness, can you breathe into that spot and allow it to expand or shift in just the slightest way? If there is intense rage or anger and you feel like you need to get up and move, I invite you at this point to get up and simply shake your arms and just focus on shaking your arms and allowing that energy to move. Not trying to get rid of anything here, just releasing the energy and allowing it to move. Inviting those sensations in, letting them know that they are safe to be felt in your body, that you are here for this reason in this moment, that you have the capacity and the willingness to give the sensation space to be felt and expressed. So for those of you who are having a very somatic experience sitting down and you're comfortable here, I invite you to stay seated and just allow yourself to continue to feel those emotions. Maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to beat the floor a little bit. If you're on the floor, you can throw a tantrum. Okay, so just ask your body what it wants to do in this moment. Now, for those of you feeling a lot of heat, again, this is mostly anger, rage, the shame and the guilt can be felt like this too. Those are some of the hardest emotions to feel and allow ourselves to feel. I want you to stand up. And if you can keep your eyes closed, just to remain in your body, I want you to inhale up and exhale down. Inhale up, exhale down. So this is a tremendous way to work with your breath, allowing more of that deep stored anger or rage, shame or guilt to come to the surface, and then just breathe with it. So for the next 2 minutes, I want you to simply ask your body what it wants to do in this moment. If you are really feeling this connection with this energy moving in your body and feeling amazing sitting here, absolutely sit here and allow this energy to move. Transcending the mind, coming down into the emotional and the physical body. If you need to get up and express it more cathartically, somatically, do that in this moment. Even simply using your breath. And once you feel the charge dissipate, you come back to your breath and just become aware of the shift. You're doing great. Your body is absolutely capable and meant to feel these emotions. The only reason we don't throw ourselves on the ground and throw tantrums on a more regular basis and punch padded walls and scream at the top of our lungs every once in a while is because we've learned to be conditioned to not do that. So right now, this work of getting into your emotional and physical body is allowing that inner child to be seen and to be heard, and allowing your adult self to express those emotions like we are meant to be expressing them all day long. This is not about the time. This is not the time to be appropriate or quiet or put together. This is a time to be introspective and learn, relearn what it's like to allow energy to move in our body. So if you're still feeling like you need to cry more, for those of you who did more of the intense exercise, that charge should be lowered or lessened at this point. It may not all be gone. Sometimes we have to do this work over and over and over many times. That memory that I shared earlier, I will still continue to go back there because there's still emotion there. I could feel it when I was recalling it, telling you. So sometimes we have to go back to these things, But allow your present moment situation, the mirrors in your life, or allow your time in a coaching session to reserve the spots when you're going to bring this stuff back up. So for the purposes of coaching, do that. Just begin to bring yourself back to your heart space and bring yourself back to the breath. You can certainly continue to be aware of the energy that's moving in your body. So we don't want to stop the movement, but I do want to bring you out of the cathartic experience if you were there. So become still in your body. And as I play the singing bowl again, I just want you to enjoy this stillness. If you catch yourself distracted by thoughts, continue to bring yourself back to the body. And in these next 2 minutes, just become really aware of how the energy is moving in your body. Beautiful. Really good work, everybody. So at this point, I would have you do some kind of a celebration movement. Don't go eat a bowl of ice cream. So it's more of a celebration movement just to honor yourself and bring yourself back to knowing that what you just did for yourself, giving yourself the time and the space and the energy to be present with you, your emotional body and your physical body in particular, is precious. Again, for most of us, it's a huge pattern interrupt because we are so used to being in our minds that we often are just so unaware of the fact that we're not fully present with our emotions and our physical body. It's all okay. No judgment. But at this point, after I sign off, or if you're in a position to turn on one of your favorite songs and just do a little bit of movement, I invite you to do that. Get a little bit of dancing in, celebrate, maybe go for a little nature walk, and just so this can integrate. Part of the integration process is, like I said, just first the pattern interrupt situation, which is first just recognizing when you are triggered, and versus stuff that emotion or restrict yourself or make up a story in your head about why you shouldn't be feeling that way. Allow yourself to step back from the situation and just become aware of what's going on. I always have a journal with me. And when I have the time and the space to do this, I will. When I'm triggered, whether sometimes it happens at the grocery store, a lot of us can get triggered on the road, driving, we're triggered. We're triggered by everything. Like I said, all day long in our lives can be an incredible experience of doing our healing work when we're aware. So if you are able to catch yourself when you're triggered or when you have an emotional charge, this could be triggered into something very happy. You could meet someone and be particularly attracted to them, to the point where it's like, wow, what is it about this person that I just love? That's another very revealing mirror. So it's not always just being triggered into the more dense emotions. This can also be, an awareness of like you seeing a mountain and just being like, oh my gosh, like, am I living in a painting? It looks like a painting. Like, take time to pull over and be with yourself in that moment and allow those emotions of joy and gratitude to fully express themselves in your body. So that's really step one. And that's kind of as far as we can go on some of these workshops without being in person, just kind of a surface level, starting to learn some of the tools that you can use moving forward to really create massive changes in your life. I mean, yeah, I had 38 years, no, not 38. I started doing the somatic work. I was introduced to it first about a decade ago, but I didn't practice it a lot until the last few months. And in the last few months, just doing this work, I would say I have cleared out years and years and years of stored emotions in my body. So it's really magical that little practices every single day can create massive results in a short period of time. When I talk about results, for me, it's an inner sense of well-being. It's not feeling afraid, not as triggered. I don't get triggered into anxiety. Not even close to the amount of times I used to. I used to be triggered into anxiety every time I went to the grocery store. That never happens to me anymore. It takes a much bigger thing to happen to trigger me into those emotions I used to try and avoid. So when I talk about inner results, heck yeah, you could have massive outer results. You could make that $10,000 in a month you were wanting to make. You could meet that person of your dreams tomorrow. Oh yeah. For me, my biggest results have come on the inside where I feel more confident. I feel way more in love with myself. I'm way less triggered by people. I have way more compassion for people versus making excuses to not connect with them because of my own inner unexpressed emotions. So that's the kinds of things, those are the kinds of things that can happen. And again, if you're really clear about your suffering, then you're already open to this path of awakening. You're already on the path, essentially, whether you are consciously or not. So I'd invite you to reach out to me if you're not a member of the Surrender to Remember Facebook group. I'm streaming this on all three of my pages. So there may be some of you on here who are not members of that. So look up Surrender to Remember Facebook group. That's the free group. If you're wanting to do more of this work among many of the other tools that I teach on how to really claim responsibility and take your life back and live this massive, amazing path of awakening and remembering and essentially rebirthing yourself into the world as the conscious creator of your life. I do offer one-on-one coaching too, and I would love to work with you. So please get into the Surrender to Remember group. You can leave a comment on here if you want, or just go to my website, which is Hollis Bailey, HOLLISBALEY.com. And I can't wait to revisit this work, meet either in the group setting in the portal or one-on-one setting for a private session. This work is just, it's my life. It's what I'm so passionate about. I have many more stories that I could tell you of how this work has affected my life and those hundreds of people I've met along the way how much this is affecting their lives too. But it's really the time to remember and to wake up. And we're meant to do this. We're here for a reason. So thank you for sharing your magic with me. I felt you all through that, through the work you did. And I can't see everyone. I saw Lori was on here and Sheila. hello, Sheila. And then excuse me, thank you, Hollis. Great job. Can't see your name. You just say Facebook user. So hello to you as well. I love you all so much, and I will, cross paths with you soon. Have a great day.